Frank jump on that link. We're on. Frank.
Welcome. We're back.
We got there. All right. Guys, we are back. I hope everyone's come back. All right. Now people are jumping on. Slowly. Okay. How are you, Frank? We're there. We're 15 minutes late, but that's okay.
No, it's all good. Better late than never. The good old saying.
We were having some absolute meltdowns there, but that is okay. We are here. We've got viewers. Thank you guys for sticking around. Can we just make sure that you guys can see us, hear us? Yes. Just make sure. I'll just wait. Frank, if you want to.
I'll touch on what we're going to be talking about. So for the viewers,
I think we're good.
Already all good.
I think we're good to kick it off. Everything is.
I'm not sure who's on, if it's the same viewers or not, but we're going to be talking about a property we purchased in December 2021 in the city of Rockhampton in central Queensland. And then, during that time, people were saying prices weren't going to be sustainable in these areas because of this COVID boom. Since then, the properties performed pretty well. We paid $417,000 roughly for this property. Back then, we were buying property for $250,000 in this suburb. But this property was a little bit more superior compared to other properties, and it was in a really, really good pocket, which we'll touch on, and what we've seen, the potential of this property and why it's performed so well for so many years.
I want the viewers to listen and watch this and think about the term that we always hear. I should have bought more property. I'll just leave it at that, and then we'll run through this. Because we always hear this, right? Your parents said it, grandparents said it, should have bought more property. Well, this was only 2.5 years ago. So you guys be the judge on if this gentleman or, you guys potentially should have bought more property. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. And thank you guys. We appreciate you guys for sticking around and being here, because it looks like the same amount of viewers there. So let's rock and roll. Frank, can you see that page?
Yes. Yep. Can see it.
Okay. Let me just wait to see if it pops up on Facebook. I hope it does. Is it popping up on Facebook? Can you guys see my page on Facebook? Just making sure. We've got Hakuna Matata being tagged. I just want to make sure that we can see the page on Facebook. Yes, we can.
Yeah,
awesome.
You can see it.
Beautiful. All right. Meet Gary. Gary's a very, very cool guy. Runs a pretty cool business. We've taken him out. We've met him a few times. Got a pretty awesome relationship with him. As Frank just mentioned, here's a property that we purchased in Queensland 2.5 years ago for $417,000. As you can see, it's a pretty clean home. It's a brick home. In 28 months, the property has now gotten revalued at 63% higher, which is absolutely crazy. $681,000. If anyone watches my videos and our videos, you'll see that I constantly refer to properties doubling within a 5-year period. The talks and the terms of properties double within a 10-year period. If you actually go and run. Oh, Frank, have you got me?
Yeah, I got you.
Maybe I blacked out there. The screen's popping up. That doubling occurs within a 5-year period. This is a perfect example of that happening. 63%, right? Obviously, double is 100%. 63% in just 2.5 years. That's what the property's done. This looks really cool. Look at this. This is social media coordinator, Amelia. Well done. Makes it look very nice. This is how we presented the property. So when we purchased the property, this is how we presented it, right? Exactly. This is the exact message that Gary got in his WhatsApp group, right? Breaking down the property and all the analytics with it, the public housing numbers, the rental yield, the land size, the age of the property, what we actually valued the property at the time, and then everything else. Looks very cool. Nice stuff. Frank, I'm not sure if you want to run through the folder here or if you've got stuff that you're going to run through.
I think we'll leave the folder. I think there's a few other things we'll talk about and the reason why we picked this property. So when, as you've seen there, we talked about public housing, which was at 2%, which is great, very low compared for the whole region, which is fantastic. But where this property was in its pocket, where we purchased it, it had 25% of renters in the area. So you always want a low level of renters in the suburb, but then when you come to a street level, we want to be looking at a low level of renters in the street level. Why? Because it means that you're going to get more demand in property price growth, more demand for renters to move into those pockets because they're sought after, and there's not many properties that will come on the market for rent as well, because there's less properties in the market, less rental properties in that area. Notice that owner occupiers look after their properties. Okay, not saying landlords are us investors. We don't, but we don't go the extra mile. We don't go do nice landscaping. We're not going to extend the property. We're not going to put swimming pools in. We're not going to go above and beyond. We're just going to make it, of course, nice, neat, tidy, but not go that extra mile. So when you have that, you see property prices will increase because of better quality properties in the streets. And this was the reason why we picked this property. And the average in that pocket was like 32%. So it went from 32%, we got it down to 25% in this pocket. And we selected this property. And not to say about 30% of the houses don't have a mortgage as well in that pocket, which is fantastic also. The higher that number, that means the more stability. Because if you ever think about it, the more people have their houses paid off, there's more stability, because regardless if interest rates go up or down, doesn't affect them because they don't have a mortgage on their home. And so this is a good sign at 30%, which is kind of like around the average in from a suburb level, but from a street level was pretty high, which was great as well.
Cool. Can you walk me through, because we specifically put these things up here, can you walk me through just, I guess, this first slide here, the medium rent? Can you walk me through that, or the guys through that?
Yeah, so medium rent. So it says here $520 per week. Okay. Now, as you can see here, it has increased 32% in the last 3 years, or 36 months, as you can see there on the screen.
That's madness.
Which is huge. Now, the average rent increase in Australia is around that 3 to 4%, maybe 5%, depending on some areas. But so as you can see here, it's done a lot more than that in the last. It's done over 10% in the last 3 years, every single year.
Yep.
So which is huge. And so, as you can see, if you own a property, you want your rent to go up as much as possible, because once again, if interest rates go up, you're going to be a slave to the property. And you don't want that to happen. And as you can see, we got in at 2021, interest rates were at record low. Since then, I think Gary's rents might be maybe, I've got to double check it. They might be at $550, close towards $600 per week, probably close towards $600 per week, which is over a 7% rental yield, which is huge. Awesome. But the property is, the rents will keep increasing as well in this region, because there is a very, very low amount of properties in the market for rent. I think there's only like 4 or maybe 5 properties in the whole suburb advertised for rent for houses.
Tell me about this stuff. I know it. I want the guys and everyone who's watching to understand this. The correlation between weekly household income versus median monthly mortgage repayments. Are you able to break that down?
Yeah, I'll break it down. So let me just talk about that and why that is so important. So when you got household income versus mortgage repayments, you want to make sure you have a thing. You want to make sure you don't get a thing called rent fatigue. What does that actually mean? It means that the rents will the rents will start to plateau and slow down in that market. So how do we work that out? How do we know if we're going to get a thing called rent fatigue? So you got household income there. I think it's $1,700 per week, and as well you got the monthly mortgage repayments, about $1,400 roughly per week. Per month. You want to divide the monthly repayments by 12. Okay, get your figure. Then you want to, of course, you want to get your weekly household income. times that by 52 weeks, divided by each other, and then it's going to spit out its ratio. Now it's about 20%, 21% roughly. So as you can see, 21% of the household income is contributing to the mortgage repayments.
Cool. Perfect. And that's healthy or unhealthy?
That's very healthy.
Okay.
You will get this a lot in capital cities where you start to see the outer fringe suburbs where you have the incomes more than 30%, or they're just on the 30% mark, and the rents don't push aggressively. And so you will get a thing called rent fatigue, which is, not a good thing.
So, sorry, can you just really dumb that down? I'd love to understand that a bit more. So, not the calculation side. The calculation side's fine. So it's just the monthly rent, the monthly income over the monthly mortgage. You don't want the monthly mortgage to be contributing more than 20% of the income.
No. So you don't want your income, okay, for the month. You don't want more than 30% of the income contributing to the mortgage repayments, because if so, you're going to get a thing called rent fatigue, because the demographic of people don't earn enough money in that area. And so you can't just be aggressive and start pushing up your rents aggressively in these markets because of this. Now, it's something to be aware of.
Right.
In a heated market where there is no rental supply, of course, rents will go up, but there is going to be a limit, and you are going to see a bit of a pullback. And so when you have everyone, kicking up a stink in those areas, which it does happen. I had a client, they've got a property, I think it's in the Blacktown region of Sydney, and they can't, increase their rent, or they can increase their rent, but they've got a bit of a backlash from their tenant because we're looking at, let's try and put the rent up. And so that happened. And, they said, the tenants kicked up a stink. We can't put the rent up there as much as what we wanted. I think they wanted to put up $50, and they come back and they want to put up like $10. And I'm like, try and go back. But, it's the market's not there for it. And so these are things that you need to be aware of, because where we purchased this property in Frenchville in Rockhampton, it's an affluent suburb in the city of Rockhampton. There are other areas that are, got lower demographic of people with lower incomes, as bad as that sounds, but, you kind of want to stay away from there because it's high public housing, number one. Number two, they don't earn a high income compared to the people in Frenchville. And so with that, you're going to get a thing called rent fatigue, not just that, lower quality tenants to some degree as well. And that will happen as investors. As you are watching, you probably are investors, and we've all probably had a bad tenant before, which doesn't want to pay rent, or pays rents late, or you can't put your rents up because they complain every time.
Yep.
And that does happen.
Cool. I love it. There's a cool
Now,
photo.
there's a photo there, but if you go back to that slide,
Go for it.
I'm not sure if you can zoom in, but there's that says there owner occupies 72%, it says, okay, in that graph, in that little chart there. That there is right there where your arrow is.
Gotcha. 72% in 2021.
2020, yeah. And so you want a high level of owner occupiers in the area. Once again, they push up property prices. They look after their properties. They're the ones that have emotional buying, patterns when they go to the market. Now, the average, where the rule of thumb is, you want to have 40%, a maximum of 40% of renters. 40% of renters and 60% of owner occupiers. Okay, so that's your rule of thumb. Now, the lower the renters get in that market, the better it is for, I guess, the investors, and because of course you got more owner occupiers. And now, when you start to see it, and you've got here 28% of renters, that's ridiculously low, and it's a very healthy market.
I love it. So 40, 60, always want it in favor of the owner occupiers. Why? They're the ones that push up prices, take care of their properties. I love it. So I asked you the question before. Would you have bought another property if you had the ability to in this region, or just at this time, right? 2021, property purchase 417, value is now 681. The answer is, of course. However, the question I want to ask you, Frank, would you have bought another property in Rockhampton, two properties in Rockhampton at the exact same time? And one further question, would you buy a property in Rockhampton today?
Great question. So, would you buy two properties in the same region? This all comes down to depending on your portfolio, depending on your strategy. I think, when we purchased this property from Gary, we moved out of this market and went to another market that's done just as good, maybe a little bit better. I got to check that property. It was in Bundaberg. And so if you've got the ability to, I would move into other markets because you are going to have different growth patterns, different economic drivers, and a different market compared to the other market that you buy in. And so this is quite important, and you want to diversify your portfolio. And it just all depends. If you've already got properties, multiple property, like let's say this is your second or third property in Queensland, you don't want to go back and buy another property in Queensland. You probably want to go into a different state because then you're going to get close to that paying land tax. And you want to try and avoid as much land tax as possible because that will kill you and take a lot of your money away from your cash flow. So that's my answer. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I would say that, I think if you get into the market at the right time and you want to get a couple properties in there, and maybe you do one as a buy and hold, another one as a buy, renovate, and decide to sell it down the track because it's a little bit older property, but you're forcing to appreciate it. That can be a great strategy as well. So I'm not. There's no right answer to this. It's depending on your strategy. And what was the other question, Age?
Would you buy in Rockhampton today?
Would I buy in Rockhampton today? There is some good pockets that are still doing quite well. I would watch out on how high you go for your price point as well, because of course, the higher the price points get, there becomes a little bit less buyers activity because of high interest rates. So what does that actually mean? If you're buying property at 600, 700, 800 in these areas of Rockhampton, some are up to $1 million, there's less buyers around because of high interest rates, which is going to cost them more to hold the property, of course. And so it's a little bit slower in those markets. There's still strong growth, of course, but not as steep as what it would be if you buy around the 400K, 500K price point, if that makes sense. So you need to watch out. But as well, we don't do too much here in Rocky, to be honest. I'll be quite honest anymore because, we've done a lot of damage at the beginning, getting in at 2021. I think 2020, actually. Can't remember. It was a while ago. And we moved into other regions as well since then. So it's just diversifying, looking at different markets that are not as hot. Rockhampton has done pretty well, as you can see here. And so you want to try and ride that wave of capital growth and try and get there. I'm not going to say at the very bottom because no one knows where the very bottom is, but towards the bottom and making sure then you can keep, having good, consistent growth as years come on.
Love it. Awesome. As I said, there's a nice photo of us and Gary took him out for a beautiful winery. That was awesome. As you guys know, I don't know. I think that's the end of the presentation. Yes, it is. As you guys know, 99% of you guys, we do this for you, who will probably never ever work with us. However, I've been instructed to the team, and I know we need data that has been presented. I'm going to put a little link in the Facebook group to just set up a call with ourselves, with our team. As you guys know, these are literally made for you as the community. They are not made to generate or do anything from that. It's essentially made because, the vast majority of you guys on this Facebook group will not ever go through and work with a company like ours. Potentially, maybe some will, maybe they won't. But if anyone does want to have a conversation just around anything that we presented here, feel free. I'll pop a little link in the Facebook comments so you guys. Joe, me, yes, no, the data does not lie, my friend. Frank, have you got anything else to say? I've popped a little link in the Facebook group or in the Facebook message. Joe, jump on there. We'll have a chat and we'll go from there. Frank, have you got anything before we finish up on our Wednesday night?
No, look, I think people can state the obvious, that the research is the most important part to the property. Of course, asset selection is another key part as well. So when you're looking at it, regardless if this property was let's say an older property, 3-bedroom, let's say because the here was a 4-bedroom, and let's say it was in poorer condition than Gary's property, it still would have had, I'm not going to say the exact amount of growth of 63%, but it definitely would have grown in the similar pattern because of the same spot or location of where it is. Just the asset would have been a lot older or maybe not as in nice condition. So just think about that. Think about the opportunity. think about, the research and what's going on. Don't get too caught up on the property looks so nice and it's in this, it's in this area or it's cheap, because that doesn't mean you're going to get growth. We could have bought in another pocket of Frenchville, high public housing, high level of renters. Yes, you still would get growth, okay, but it's that, in those sought after locations that really stick out long term. So you got to think long term, not short term.
Even though this is shortish term, right? And again, let's be honest, he's going to hold this asset probably for life. So this is short term. However, he's achieved 25, 30% growth for the first 2 years, right? Like, he essentially could go and buy 2-3 properties. If he wanted to, he could sell those properties and go on his merry way. He's obviously not going to do that. But awesome. I've put a link in the group. If anyone's seen it, Joe will get in contact, just literally click on that link and book in a time with the guys. We'll have a chat, take you through data and what's there, and that's pretty much it. Frank, thank you, guys. Sorry for being 10, 15 minutes late. Tech issues. We got there eventually. It was actually a really good session. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time.
See you guys. See you next week or 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.